Hi and welcome, Sarah here. I absolutely love the air dry clay project that I have for you today, and it turned out super cute. I'm going to show you some air dry clay techniques to make sure you get a lovely and neat finished item. And this project is simple and easy if you follow this air dry clay tutorial step by step. To make this clay pot, I recycled this air dry clay. I'll link this video on how to recycle your air dry clay below. But of course you can make your clay pot from your chosen brand of air dry clay, my preference being Das clay. Roll and smooth your clay as I've just shown you, and we're going to take a bowl, and here I have a safety pin, and we're simply going to use this to cut a nice circle out. I can put the dimensions below if you need them. I'm going to use this 2 litre bottle and a cookie cutter that fits over the spout like this. This project would be wonderful much larger as well, just make sure you make your clay thicker. I'm using a tile to work on here, just make sure you can lift it off, and then we take some water and just simply with our finger smooth down the edges. I've flipped it over as well and make sure I smooth down the underside too. Once all smooth, you can take the cookie cutter and cut out the very centre of our larger disc. I'm going to keep this little disc to one side and use it for another project. I'll link that below. Delicately with both hands lift up your disc, and we're going to gently place this nice and evenly over the bottle. If you'd like your shape a little bit more organic, you can leave it like this and that would be beautiful, but today I'm just going to make mine nice and even all the way around, and we very gently apply small amounts of pressure, gradually moving around and get that to form in the shape of the top of the bottle. And look at it from the side and make sure you're happy and you get it nice and even to begin with. Once you're happy with the shape, we're going to let this section dry, and that helps us get a really neat finish at the end. When you have a dried piece of clay, we can add water and then easily attach some wet clay. So it's a good technique with air dry clay to keep that shape, as if it was still wet it would easily deform when we move on to doing the next part, so I find this a much better way of doing something that little bit more complicated. I just need a little bit more clay, so I'm going to add a bit of fresh clay from the packet and knead it all together nicely. I've rolled the clay into a long thin strip, and I'm going to make a little template with a piece of card to make sure we can go round this rim, and then once you're happy with your template you can cut this out with a nice sharp knife, nice and neatly to form our walls of our little pot. I've rolled my clay fairly thinly, but if you're a beginner I recommend rolling it out a bit thicker so you have a little bit more to work with and that it's not so flimsy. Again, we want to just smooth out our clay before we use it, just using a little bit of water. With something sharp, just score the very ends of the clay as this is where the join is going to be. Very carefully lift the clay up, make sure it's not stuck to the surface, and then we're just going to take some water and wet the very rim where we're going to attach this clay to. You need to make sure it's wet to make sure it's going to attach and adhere. And you can also take another section of clay and make a nice long coil, as we can use this to attach it as well. I'll show you that in a moment. Very neatly align your clay around the inner rim here, and this is where, if you do struggle with this, roll your clay out a bit thicker. It just takes a little bit of practice to handle the clay to make sure we haven't got all fingers and thumbs in it. Take something flat, a knife or a lollipop stick or a clay tool like this, and we simply want to bridge the gap from one side to the other and then back again, just to make sure we bring both sides together and that we seal the join here. Really take your time and be nice and gentle with it, and then we can add a little bit of water and smooth it all out. Repeat for the join on the inside. You can also add a coil like this on the outside of the pot if you feel there's not enough clay to join the two parts together. The same as we did with the side join, we're going to take our tool and blend this clay into the hardened clay. As I say, you can add a coil around here and blend it together like that if you wish, and I'm just taking a little bit of water and smoothing it out. I've repeated that all the way around. This is all nice and secure, so very carefully turned it over, and I'm going to use this coil and I'm simply going to join the edges together here where there's a slight gap. So put the coil all the way around and use that blending technique to blend this coil and fix so that we've got a really nice strong join here. Once you've done this all the way round, I think the shape's coming together really lovely, and you can let it dry at this stage if you want to, and then add the base once it's all dry again. But mine is fairly secure, so I'm just going to turn it over and show you that again we'll cut a base, marking out the base on our other piece of rolled out clay, and then this time I've scored all the way around each of the edges, and here I'm just adding some air dry clay slip, and that's a bit of our glue as it's starting to dry out a little bit more, so if we add this in it just makes sure it really attaches well. So add the base on and we're simply going to attach it as we did again before and blend those edges and make it nice and neat, and really take your time. My clay is fairly thin, so it's caving in a little there. You might actually like that shape and like it dimpling in at the bottom. It looks really quite nice, but if you don't want it like that, we can simply turn it over and push the air out of the base and let it dry like that. But now, while we have it turned over, we can make sure the join at the bottom is nice and secure too. Once you're happy with the shape, we then let it dry, and this is what it looks like once it's dry, and we can take some nice fine sandpaper and sand out any imperfections. And then once it's all sanded, we're ready to decorate it. You can decorate it any way you wish, but I've got this really simple and effective and super easy way of painting it. You can add gesso or sealant at this stage, it's just personal preference, but I'm going in with my first coat of a thin wash of acrylic paint. So I've mixed my blue and black with some water. I use this as a base coat to adhere to the clay. Once this was fully dry, I then went in with non-watered down acrylic paint. I always make sure I paint in the direction of the piece. Dry really well in between coats and make sure you stand it onto something so that the wet paint is not touching anything. Once dry, you would move it around and then paint the next section. I have some white acrylic paint here and a cotton bud and a skewer and the end of a paintbrush, and we're simply going to dab on some dots with these simple tools. And I like to make varied size dots. You could do yours all the same if you wish, and you basically just want to keep dipping into that white acrylic paint and making lots of dots. And then I do one section, let it dry, and then once it's fully dry, move around and dot in the rest, and it's really therapeutic and fun. I absolutely love doing this bit. Let that dry and then come back to it and do the rest. My acrylic paint is fully dry and I like to use an all-purpose spray lacquer. You could use Mod Podge or any glaze or lacquer of your choice. Again, make sure nothing's touching the wet lacquer, let a section of it dry, then turn it over and then spray the other section so that nothing touches it while it's wet. And I'm absolutely thrilled with how my air dry clay pot has turned out. I think it's really beautiful, a really simple and effective way to paint it too, so I do hope you enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching and come and see some more. Bye for now.